Hello, Dr. Siambi. Thank you very much, and hello everybody for joining us today. It is a pleasure for me to be here. So, my area of expertise and my work are, I would say, a bit different to the rest that have been presented today. So, I'm very happy to hear about the trends, the food trends that are happening downstream in Africa when it comes to for example, consumer trends or market trends in big food companies in Africa. But the Crop Trust, where I'm strategic partnerships manager, is an organization whose mandate lies a bit further upstream. So our work, our mission, is basically to safeguard crop diversity forever. So we work with a network of seed banks globally, and the idea is that by supporting them financially in perpetuity and raising their management up to standards, we can ensure that future generations will have access to all the astounding agricultural biodiversity that exists out there. So this work is a tiered work. It has, of course, the large international collections, mostly hosted in the CGIR, that contain most of the crucial commercial and staple crops food security. It also has the global seed vault in Svalbard, in the north, almost halfway between mainland Norway and the North Pole, which is a backup facility for seeds. But a crucial, let's say, the base of the pyramid is actually national collections and all the astounding biodiversity that exists in the collections harbored within countries. So these collections are an crucial complement to, for example, the international collections of the CGIR, because they host a much greater diversity of, for example, indigenous and native crops. Uh, Africa, of course, is for many crops a biodiversity hotspot, but Africa also, as you may all know, has suffered the negative effects of monocropping. So, of course, the let's say colonization of maize led to a significant improvement in several hunger indicators in Africa, but it has also contributed to a displacement of several indigenous crops that have been also in the brink of extinction, or at least extinction from the field. So today I'm going to speak about one of our projects. As I mentioned, in my case, I cannot speak a lot about food trends, but I can speak about the fact that, well, 80% of the food that is produced in Africa is produced in through smallholder farming. And smallholder farmers are not only a population that is extremely vulnerable, it's almost 33 million of them, with dependents, it's almost 100 million. It's not only a population that is extremely vulnerable to hunger and malnutrition, but is also a population that is extremely vulnerable to, of course, climate change and land degradation. So what we have seen in Africa, in many of the national collections with which we're working and many of our regional partners, is a trend of smallholder farmers trying to go back to indigenous native varieties of crops because of different traits that these crops hold may allow them to grow in higher salinity or water scarcity or climate variability. So it is with this in mind, and I will share my screen now. I don't know why I cannot, oh, here, okay. Sorry. It is with this in mind that we launched 1 year ago this project called Seeds for Resilience. So Seeds for Resilience is a project supported by the German cooperation, but what it basically tries to achieve is to support key national seed collections in Africa. So we believe these seed collections, the collections that are harbored by these national genetic centers, actually hold a key for a more sustainable and climate resilient agriculture in the African continent. So as I have mentioned, there is a big problem when it comes to crop diversity in Africa. African food systems are, of course, under threat from climate change. There is the ongoing and increasing risk of desertification, of course, in the north, but there is also a major risk of genetic erosion elsewhere in the continent as a result of monocropping. So what we see from our genetic maps, for example, is that crop diversity is being lost at unprecedented rates, and that many of the national seed collections that are actually the last resource for this smallholder farmers and breeders to use this material are in very difficult conditions. They host a key resource for the future of Africa, but yet they are almost fully unsupported. So what is the crop diversity we're seeing in Africa? We're seeing in Africa a huge or astounding diversity in some of the key crops, staple commercial crops that are included in Annex 1 of the International Plant Treaty. This includes, of course, millets, Bambara groundnuts, sorghum, which has been extensively mentioned in this session, but also a lot of indigenous vegetable varieties, for example, that hold a lot of important tools to address some of the major nutritional challenges of Africa. So this natural diversity, of course, can be used in two different ways. First, it can be used for direct use in farmers' fields. There is some extent of in situ conservation in Africa that we want to support, but mostly this project is about ex situ. But of course, the seeds in the gene banks can be used to support directly farmers, or also, of course, to support research and breeding programs for improved varieties. For example, as our previous speaker mentioned about biofortification. So we feel that the support of this national seed collections is actually crucial for climate change adaptation and vulnerable African cropping systems. So what are we trying to achieve? And how does this align with food trends? So basically what we see is that many of the smallholder farmers, as I mentioned, roughly 33 to 35 million, are starting to shift towards demanding not only these collections, but also seed companies in Africa, more indigenous material and native material that is resistant to the threats they are seeing in their climate. So what this project is trying to achieve in the countries in which we're working is basically create a system of access to seeds with support not only of the gene banks directly, but also of seed companies in Africa. But what we also want to do is not only create the system of access to seeds, but also through breeding programs, really supply the system, supply the market with improved varieties of high performance of native crops, which of course would also align with the increasing trend in the consumers of demanding these types of crops. So of course that is a component that goes further downstream. So what do we need to first do as the crop trust with these gene banks? These gene banks first don't know what is there. They don't have full information on what diversity exists in these collections. Many of these collections, of course, have no funding from either the government or from the international financial institutions. They also don't have basic infrastructure needs. We have an issue, for example, with a gene bank in Ghana where there is limited access to power, and whenever there is a climate, I don't know, let's say strong winds or strong rains, the access of power is hindered. So all that seeds safeguarded there could be lost forever. So the project support is of course financial. It's of course upgrading for equipment purchase, the maintenance of the seeds, but also it's about long-term funding and information systems for all this material.
Rodrigo,
so what we want to do,
you have a minute to wrap up.
Yeah, in these African countries, we want all this diversity to be known, and we want all this diversity to be accessible for farmers and later on for consumers. So I will go quickly through this. There's not a need to go through this, but basically the countries in which we are operating, we identified these 5 countries because they host international collections and astounding diversity of indigenous crops. Is Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Zambia. So as I mentioned, this project will have a 3-year time horizon to really put these collections up to standard and ensure that there is in perpetuity safeguarding of this material. But later on, we will also involve seed companies, food companies, and of course, breeding programs and institutions like IPAD, because what we want is not only for these seeds to be stored in the stream banks, but for these seeds to also support and underpin the food trends that we're seeing in Africa towards healthier and more indigenous crops. So thank you.
Thank you.